What's up, gangsters? How about a product review? The first from the newly renovated Rube Goldberg Enterprises Studios. What I've got for you is really cool. This is the David Union 365 handy router. There's some contention about the correct pronunciation of that, but right now I'm going with David Union. Anyway, this is the basically this little thing is a really neat little rotary tool that is aimed directly at the same market segment that uses proxxon. And so what I'm going to do today is make this more than just a review of this thing. I'm going to make it into an actual shootout between it and my proxxon, which is sitting right over there on my new workbench, because I think that people just naturally want to know how the two things compare. And I think we're going to get that question answered here. So let's get right into it. Okay, so here we go. Let's get into this thing. Now, as you can see, this is very nicely packaged. I mean, this is the kind of packaging that I expect when I order something from Apple. So pretty impressed with that. Doesn't necessarily mean that what's inside is going to be equally amazing, but it's always a good start, right? So the coolness of the packaging extends because it's got this magnetically closed flip-top lid here, and the thing is pretty firmly held in this foam thing, and I already know, because I confess that I've had this out of the box once already. Getting it dug out of this foam is not the simplest thing, so I'm just going to go ahead and cheat. Leverage is your friend, right? Okay, so the first thing that you notice when you take it out of the box is that it's nice, feels nice and solid. It's actually heavier feeling than I expected it to be, so that's also a good sign, in my opinion, when it comes to pretty much anything handheld, especially tools. You know, it just gives you that confidence that it's going to be solid and durable. So, all right, we'll have to work around my clumsiness here. This packaging is tight. So let's see what's in here. Pretty sure this is the power supply. So let me get this open. Okay, so as predicted, that was the power supply, and it's a pretty standard little thing. Looks like a, let's see, looks like a standard 6 amp, 100, 240 volt, 50, 60 hertz power supply. So that should be good for wherever you live in the world, especially since it's got this removable and swappable adapter for whatever type of outlets you have in your particular neck of the woods. So that's good. That's very considerate. Also went ahead and opened this accessories box. So let's have a look and see what's in here. Okay, all right, that's that. Okay, so that's pretty neat. They give you a spiffy little stand, and this is kind of a, yeah, it's just an injection molded thing. That's pretty cool. I like that. That's a touch of class. All right, now in this little bag here, we have a couple of very important things. Which I'm pretty sure is a 3-jaw keyless chuck, and another collet, because as you can see, it's got a collet in it right now. So let's get into this dinky little Ziploc bag, see what we got. And yes, in fact, this is the world's smallest 3-jaw chuck. I'm not sure what's, okay, that's just part of the mechanism there. So that's what that is. And look, this is really cool. This is the level of detail and quality here. The printing or etching right there on the back side of that collar for the 3-jaw chuck. That's really cool. I just love details like that, and I'm impressed that the thing has this super tiny little 3-jaw, because that's my favorite. Sure, you can say that collets offer less vibration, more precision, all of that, and that's not necessarily wrong, but the question is, do we care? Because first of all, are you doing anything with a handheld rotary tool where precision is that important? I mean, obviously you don't want it vibrating like crazy, but I have yet to ever pick up one with a 3-jaw chuck that vibrated to any degree that made it a problem. I mean, if I did, I'd send it back, because that'd be a much deeper problem than just the type of chuck it has. And as far as like strength or whatever, I mean, again, if you're putting that much of a load on a little tiny rotary tool like this, you're probably not doing it right. So I don't really think that any of those arguments against a 3-jaw keyless chuck hold up, especially when what you get for the trade-off in possible loss of precision or strength is the convenience of being able to swap your cutters so quickly. Yeah, to me it's a no-brainer. I hate collets. I don't ever use them. If you like them, great. You get both options with this thing. So that's fantastic. So what I'm going to do now is get this thing plugged in and get it running, and then we will do a quick little comparison with my Proxxon micromot 50E, because that's really the competition here. It's what I've been using all along, and I think and I love it. But I think that's what I and a lot of people want to know is, how does this thing stack up against what I would consider to sort of be the standard. Okay, so got this thing all plugged in. Now, the first thing that I noticed that's going to irritate me and maybe you is this cord is pretty stiff. I mean, this is just standard cheapo power supply type thing where, this cord, it's just stiff, and because it comes bundled up really tight, it's got these kinks in it. Now, you can hang a weight on it and get it to relax and cure some of that. The other thing is that it's not super long. I think this is probably like 3 feet, 1 meter. So it's not a super long cord. That could be a problem for some of you. I'm fortunate in that I have a power strip in the wall just right over there, about 2 feet away. So not a huge problem. But this is where I want to start giving a direct comparison to the Proxxon. One knock on Proxxon from folks who love the Dremel cordless, and I forget what model number it is, but they have a point, is cordless is certainly nice, but it's not an issue with the Proxxon because, all right, it's got this springy type cord that's very soft and floppy, and it's lightweight and doesn't, it's never bothered me. So that's a distinct difference already. Now let's start to get into some of the other differences. All right, obviously there's a size difference here. The Proxxon is quite a bit larger. Again, it's never been an issue for me because it is so light and so well balanced that I can hold the Proxxon just like this and do really precise work, even with that cord hanging off the back end of it. I mean, it looks like it'd be really ungainly, but it just proves not to be. So, but there's certainly no doubt that in the hand, this handpiece, this is basically as small as like just the handpiece on a Fordham or any other kind of flex shaft type tool, but without the penalty of the flex shaft. And I can just feel immediately that this is much lighter and easier to maneuver even with the stiff cord. So probably not a real huge penalty. All right, now let's talk about operating speed because I want to see how this thing feels and how fast it's turning. So here we go. Wow, I don't know if you can even hear it. It's so quiet. There we go. Now I have no idea how fast that actually is. It's because they don't give you any sort of numbers or indications, and I don't see any kind of, in fact, here's the thing. This is so quiet running at lowest RPM that you're gonna have to like be conscious of turning it off, because I was about to set it down and I realized, hey, it's still on. So yeah, it goes slow. At the slowest speed, it is undoubtedly slower than the proxxon, and we can see that right now. So let me just turn this on, okay, and you can see how much louder the proxxon is. Again, that doesn't matter, but that's the proxxon's lowest speed. Now, they say in their literature that it's 5,000 RPM. I guess I don't really have any reason to doubt that. But that's with the standard proxxon transformer, which is the one that you can plug a single tool into, and it doesn't have any speed control. So this is the slowest you get with that. And then, of course, when you jack it up to 20,000 RPM, the thing is just ripping, and you can feel it, It's a bigger motor, it's going to have more torque, etc. Now, here's the thing, okay? I've got the Proxxon NG5E transformer, okay? So let me spin you around if I can, and my camera boom is in the way. May not be able to do this. Let's see, how is this going to happen? This may not happen. This is my new camera setup, and I had not really thought this through. Okay, there we go. There is the NG5E transformer, and it's super cool because it has its own speed control. All right, so I've got it turned all the way up, but if I turn it all the way down, I don't know what the exact factor is, okay, but if I turn it all the way down and then I kick the proxxon, okay, now you can see that the slowest speed is way slower, and I don't know what that speed is, but clearly very slow, very nice. Even when I crank it all the way up here, so I've got this now set at the highest speed on the handpiece, still not super fast with it turned down all the way on the transformer. So this transformer gives you a significant advantage in terms of speed control with the Proxxon, as well as the fact that you can plug in 3 tools at once, but it comes at a price, and we'll talk more about price later on in this review, because I do think that's relevant for sure when you're considering what the best value is going to be. But that's the Proxxon transformer system, and obviously with this thing here from here we go again with the pronunciation, David Union. I have no idea how it's supposed to be said, but at any rate, you don't have a transformer to buy or deal with. So, well, I mean, you do in the power supply, but again, not in the same way that you do with the Proxxon. Now, the thing that you probably notice with the Proxxon is, okay, if I've got it turned on here, and I'm holding it with both hands, and I'm magically turning it on. How am I doing that? Okay, well, you may be able to hear as I flail around with my foot underneath the workbench. I have a foot switch. I've got the Proxxon foot switch under the bench, which is part of the magic of this system for me, is that I can position the workpiece and my hand exactly where I want before I start the tool, and then I can kick it on with my foot. And for drilling, that's invaluable. And we'll talk more about drilling down the road. But for the moment, let's talk about what I want to do to compare these two things. So the typical kind of thing that I do with rotary tool is, you need to grind some plastic off. That's the deal, right? Grinding, polishing, sanding, not so much. Really grinding and polishing are the two things that I do the most with this thing. I used to do some drilling, but because I used to only have the simple transformer, and it's kicked on so hard, I would rarely use this for drilling, and I bought a different thing for that. And again, I'll talk about that. But so I want to just remove some material. And you can be really precise with this proxxon, even as large as it is and as big as this cutter is. Now this is also a good point. You may notice I have said that the minimum speed on this thing is like 5,000 RPM. And you're like, well, but isn't that too fast? Because 5,000 RPM melts plastic, right? Well, yeah, that's the myth that goes around the model making community, but it's ridiculous. It's not true. In fact, under normal circumstances, I use 5,000 to 7,000 RPM for polishing, and I use about 17,000 RPM for material removal. And the fact is that these little bitty cutters are meant to be spun really fast. And the only time you have to worry about melting the workpiece is if you're doing it wrong. Pushing way too hard, holding the thing still. Because the reason that the material melts, obviously it gets too hot, and that happens because friction. And the friction increases when one of two things is happening. Either you're pressing too hard or your cutter is dull. So if your cutter's good and you find yourself melting the workpiece, then you need to just back off a little bit, not be quite so ham-fisted. All right? But that's what I would typically do with a cutter like this. I also find that the faster I turn it, the less it tends to chatter. And it's not a huge issue with I think that's 8 flutes. It's not as big of an issue with an 8 flute cutter or, a grinding burr, for example. But again, if you turn them faster, everything is just better. So now let me switch. And let's talk about torque for a second, okay? I can basically hold this thing with my hand and keep it from turning. That's, the relative amount of torque. You're not going to do that with a Dremel, and that's part of the magic with this type of rotary tool, is that it doesn't have so much horsepower that it's just going to, shred anything that you touch it with, and it just is easier to work with. So, having said all that, I timed this review with something that I actually need to do, so that we can see how this thing works in anger compared to the proxxon. All right? So, this is what I've got going here. I do not like the detail on the upper part of the instrument panel. It's just not very sharply printed. This is an Edward Look resin panel, and it's nice. Overall, there's some things I like about it, but when I compare it to the Yahoo panel, okay, which I've got right there, all right, you can see the difference in the quality of the printing on the Yahoo part. The Yahoo part is photo etch, so it lacks a little bit of the 3D relief, but they do get you some of that around the gauge bezels. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to just smooth off the upper portion here. I'm not going to bother with removing this. There's no need to. The Yahoo has to have something to get glued to. So I'm going to smooth that off and then glue that on there. And so this is exactly the kind of thing where I would get out a power tool. I mean, sure, I could do this with a file or a sanding stick or whatever, but those each have their disadvantages, especially for me where I'm so clumsy, because my hands just don't work good. So I actually feel more confident, ironically, with this monster, so to speak. It kind of seems like a monster for this type of job, but I actually am more confident doing it this way than I would be with a hand tool. And part of how I'm going to set that up to be even more and more confident is by fixturing it. So let me do that real quick. Okay, so fixturing. All right, super important. Any machining operation is only as successful as your fixturing. Doesn't matter how good the equipment is. If you can't keep your workpiece under control, then you're screwed. And so all I'm doing here is using this 3M double-sided tape. I use it a lot, and it is great for this type of thing. I've stuck the thing to this 1, 2, 3 block. These are super handy, and this is one of the things that I use them for. Because now I've taken my really small thing and stuck it to a relatively large and massive thing. And that gives me something to hang on to and just provides a lot of overall stability. So what I'm gonna do is sort of treat this thing like a poor man's end mill. And I'm gonna come in here like this and basically just machine the details off. Okay, so just did a little bit there so that you can see all I'm trying to do is flatten that out. All right, and that's the basic use case here. And now that I've shown you what how I would normally approach it with the proxxon, let's get to the real business here and see how things go with this new tool, whose name I cannot correctly pronounce. All right, so that took me a second. I'm just really used to my proxxon, and this won't be a problem for anybody with normal hands, but for me, the operation of holding the shaft lock while I tighten the collet is a little bit of a challenge. But got it done. All right, now it's on. I'm gonna try not to, out of habit, kick the foot starter because it doesn't work with this, right? So got to turn it on, and I'm just going to go ahead and all right, I just went ahead and turned it all the way up. I don't see any reason not to. So here we go. Let's do a little cutting. Okay, there we go. There is absolutely nothing not to love about that. I mean, you can see the result speaks for itself, looks just exactly like I would expect it to. If I could get it on the camera. I mean, that's what I wanted, is just to basically flatten that off. Doesn't have to be perfect, and the process was really nice and controllable. Obviously, I don't want things to get crazy because I've got the detail that I want to keep right there next to everything that I'm removing. So that needed to be, I needed to have confidence that the tool wasn't going to get away from me, and I never felt like there was any chance of that. Super controllable, super lightweight, did exactly what it was supposed to do. No complaints whatsoever there. Honestly, literally the only negative is that I had to turn it off, turn it on, and again, unless you've been spoiled by a foot switch, that's not going to matter to you. And here's what I've been thinking as I have considered this product, is I could probably maybe plug, and I may try this as an experiment, is the foot switch has a cord coming out of it that's just basically like an extension cord with a female socket on the end, and you just take the plug that you would normally plug into the wall from the proxxon transformer and plug it into the end of the cord that comes out of the foot switch, and then the foot switch plugs into the wall. I think I could probably plug the David Onion, this is gonna kill me, this thing's power supply into the cord coming off of the proxxon foot switch and use the proxxon foot switch. I mean, that would be fantastic. So that's good. All right, now that I've done that, let's go back to what I started with on the proxxon and do this little example of just, sort of brute force material removal and see what that produces. So, accidentally slowed it down there because of my clumsy hands. So here we go. Let's just get in close and see. Okay, it does exactly what it's supposed to do. Now you can kind of tell when I really hog on it that it brings the motor speed down. You can tell it loads it up, and that's to be expected. Again, smaller tool is going to have less torque, so no big deal though, because you don't need that much torque. I mean, even the proxxon has more than we really need. So I mean, this is good. So let's say, one of my favorite things to use with this type of tool is dental burrs. Okay, you just got to be careful. I thought I had it switched off, went to re-grip it, and it's still turning. And, if this was really sharp, I would be bleeding right now because it's still on. All right, so that's going to be a thing that, for me anyway, I have to pay attention to. Now, the thing that I use probably just as much with this type of tool as I do this standard burr is I use these wonderful dental burrs. And I'm lucky my dentist is super cool. He just gives them to me for free. As long as I spend a lot of money there. So I have this whole little collection in here, and I actually have a huge collection of them, but these are the ones that I keep ready to use. And you can see that there's some great little cutters, and you can see how small they are. I mean, these things are just fantastic. I can't recommend them enough. And then even then, there are situations where I wish I had something that was even smaller. But like for removing flash on a really delicate part, what I'll often do is I'll load up one of these little tiny burrs, like that conical one right there, put that in in my rotary tool, and you'd be amazed at how precisely you can work to smooth off something like a parting line witness on a really small part with that type of operation. So that's fantastic. The other thing that I use my proxxon for a lot is polishing. Okay, you can see that here. So if I need to polish regular styrene after doing some body work, or if I need to polish a clear part, like when you remove one of those witnesses from the top of a canopy, like a Mustang canopy, for example, got to do some polishing. And what I use is polishing I mean, I will sometimes use a liquid polish like Shoals, which is an automotive grade polish. They have a whole system. It's, kind of like, Tamiya's polishing compound, Gravity polishing compound, but it's real automotive grade stuff. But more often than not, I use a polishing stick or a paste, which is called Zam, and I'll show it to you real quick. Let's see which drawer it's in now. Here we go. So this is what Zam is. This is made for polishing materials like clear acrylic, Lexan, plexiglass, whatever you want to call it, that you see a lot in industrial model making shops. And as you can see, what you do is you spin up the tool. In fact, let's just do it, because here's where torque kind of comes into play. So let me switch out the, okay, so got a polisher on there. Now this is just a cotton polishing wheel. You can get these on Amazon for like, $5 for 20 of them. They're super cheap. You have to use these cotton cloth polishing wheels, or there's also a wool felt type. I don't think I have one in here, but those are also pretty good. But those are really for liquid polishing. Okay, I need to back up here because I'm about to create some disastrous confusion. All right, there is a wool felt type wheel. They look like this, but they're fuzzy, and I have some. I just don't know where they are right now. Okay, that's very different from the felt polishing burrs that you get with like a Dremel, because you definitely do not want to use those because they will melt your shit in a big hurry. But you can, they look like a burr. They look like this, except they are made out of packed felt. This is a polishing thing that's you get from Jewelry Supply, and they're really cool for polishing metal as well. It's got an abrasive impregnated in the silicon burr there, okay, but not for plastic at all. If you're going to operate on plastic, really, I just feel like this is the best way to go. And what you do is turn it on, pick up what sounds like a medium speed, all right, then you just stick it in the, all right, now this is the first penalty here. Because what you have to do is put it in here and put some torque on it, because you essentially have to melt this paste and get it on the wheel, or you're not gonna have any compound. So, all right. So this thing doesn't have the torque to pull that off. Let me show you the difference with the proxxon. All right, so I've got this thing turned on to about 7,000 RPM, and I want to load up my polishing compound. See, the proxxon will keep chugging, and it'll give me enough motion there that I can load up the wheel. It's kind of hard to see on this one, but now I have enough polishing compound on there that I can now actually do some polishing. So there we go. That's a good little comparison. But again, it doesn't matter if you're not doing any polishing. So like if you're an armor modeler, for example, I can't imagine that you guys ever have much of a reason to polish anything. That's really a thing for aircraft and car modeling guys. So, you just kind of have to weigh that based on what your intended use is. All right, now the other thing that we often want to do with a rotary tool is drill, right? Yeah, pin vices are great if your hands work good. Mine don't. So I hate pin vices. I just can't use them effectively. And for me, and I think this is probably true for anybody really, is because of the size and the weight of a rotary tool, I actually get better control than I would with the pin vise. For me, having that foot switch is the magic, because I can position the drill right where I want to poke the hole before I ever kick on the power. And that's a pretty magical deal. But let's do some drilling. Let me load up a couple of drill bits. I've got this little wire drill thing. And this is where having a 3-jaw keyless really comes in handy, because if you're using circuit board drills, which a lot of people like, and they're great for their thing, obviously you have a standard shank size, so you could use collets for these. But I don't use these very often because they snap so easily. I mean, you can look at the really small ones sideways and they break. I mean, any lateral force whatsoever, because these things are made to use in a CNC machine where they just absolutely go straight up and down at a very high speed, and so that's not an issue with them. But for hand drilling, you can get yourself into trouble with these in a big hurry. The other thing with these is that because, like, when you look at the pitch of the twist, all right, see, okay, how fast that pitch is, all right, compare that to the pitch on a regular high-speed steel twist drill. Okay, this has a much slower pitch. So in addition to being flexible, high-speed steel can take some side load, especially with these small diameters. These things are a little more forgiving because they don't tend to grab, all right? These things, especially at the larger sizes, will start cutting and grab immediately, and they have a tendency to screw themselves in rather than drilling if you're not, holding everything perfectly. I've also, like with this, I've had them snatch the workpiece out of my hand with one of these larger sizes, or bring the drill to a stop completely. And drilling with these by hand in a pin vise is a real challenge for that exact reason. So again, I don't use these a whole lot, but that's all sort of an aside to what we're really talking about here. So let me load up a couple of these drill bits and we'll do a little bit of a comparison on drilling. Okay, here we go. So got a couple of drill bits. They're almost the same size. Let's just poke some holes and see how it goes. All right, so again, I can kick this on with my foot, but if you've got the regular transformer, that's the slowest you're gonna get for a drilling operation. Now with these high-speed steel bits, I don't worry as much about that, but look what happened, okay? So it basically went in there so fast, it melted and stuck and seized, and then it spun in the chuck. Okay, it didn't actually melt, but you can see what happened right there. Let's see if I can do it. Yeah, see, and again, that's one of the disadvantages of a keyless 3-jaw chuck, at least for me, where my fingers are weak and they don't really want to tighten as well as they should. All right, but let me turn the speed down on this thing to a more drill-friendly speed and see how things go. Because again, I've got the luxury transformer. See, that's nice. Pops right through there, super controllable, but it still did not hold in the chuck very well. So that's annoying, but it is what it is. All right. Now let's try this one and see how that goes. So picking what seems like a pretty solid speed for drilling, and I have to just turn it on and then go for it. Let's see how we do. Nice, super controllable. And again, now if you could see my foot, you'd be laughing because I'm moving it like I'm kicking the foot switch, because that's my normal mode. All right, let's do some more and see how it goes. Like, it almost seems like it's not going to have enough torque, but then it works just fine. And notice I was able to get this 3-jaw chuck tight enough to where the bit's not spinning in the chuck. So that's pretty cool. Not sure what the difference is there, but bottom line is that's a win. So really good, very impressive drilling performance. Okay, so here we are back at it a couple of weeks later with this review of this David Union 365. I hope this isn't too disjointed. It's been a couple of weeks since I did the last segment, and I'm pretty sure I don't remember everything I've been talking about because I've been a little bandwidth challenged with remodeling my house. But in the meantime, I have done some actual real work with this thing. I've been using it as a drill. I drilled all the holes for those wires off the back of those instruments there in this little P40 cockpit. I drilled those 2 holes right there and the notch down there in the corner. And you know, this is the kind of stuff that needs a lot of control because I'm adding detail wires after paint in some cases, and you need a tool that's not going to get away from you. So I can report that in actual use, this thing has performed wonderfully. It's great as a drill, works great as a they call it a router, but you know, basically just a little rotary grinder. And I'm really happy with it. The one thing that I also did a little bit of learning while I was away, spent some time studying the David Union website, and even asked those guys how to pronounce it. And it is, in fact, David Union. So I'm pleased with that because I was going to keep saying it that way anyhow. But one specific thing that I learned, this thing has an RPM range from 1,800 to 13,500. So starts a little lower and ends a little lower than the proxxon, but it's all good. It works great. So now we're going to get into a little bit of the nitty gritty because I think what people are going to want to know is would I recommend this thing over the proxxon? And so I have to try and sort of answer that question. And a lot of it comes down to price. All right, so let's talk about that. If you look on Amazon, you'll see that the proxxon micromot 50 or 60 E as it is now, or the EF rather. You want the EF because it's the one that's got the 3-jaw keyless chuck. All right, but if you look here on Amazon, okay, so you'll see proxxon has many beautiful things that are very tempting. Hey, a mill for only $1,060. But we'll try to ignore all the super cool stuff and stick to the facts. Oh, and of course, my phone rings right when I'm in the middle of doing this. All right, so here's the 50E with the NG2S transformer, and that's the basic transformer. Okay, and in this case, $108 for the combo. I've seen the individual prices on the 2 things be in the $40 to $50 range. Let's see if we can find another example here. All right, there's the 60E for $42.61. Let's see if we can find the EF. At any rate, the NG2S transformer is all right, here's the EF, okay, for $43.44. The transformer, I've seen it for about the same amount of money. Let's see, proxxon NG2S. Okay, I may not be putting that in correctly. I don't know why I can't find an individual one, but at any rate, that's about the right amount of money for that thing. So you're in the $80 to $100 range for the proxxon micromot and the transformer, and you have to have them both, and it's relatively easy to get on Amazon. Now, the thing with the basic transformer, with the proxxon, is that you can run their other tools off of it, okay? And that's important because I'm not a huge fan of the proxxon micromot as a drill. It just spins a little faster than I'd like to run a drill. It works fine, but it's just not my preference. So I have the proxxon Miss 1, okay, which is really honestly a pure luxury item. You can see lists here for $145. It's gone up. I think I paid $100. I think I paid $85 for mine. So I'm sure you can probably find a better price on it. But it's this thing right here, okay? Now I don't have it plugged in, but I love this thing. It's solid and chunky. As you can see, it's actually a micro screwdriver, but it's got a true Jacob's chuck with a key. So you can clamp down on a drill bit just fine. I've drilled 1/4-inch holes with this thing. It's got a lot of torque, and it turns about 250 RPM. Some clown tried to tell me on my review of this thing that 250 RPM was absolutely not appropriate for a drill. I don't know where he got that idea, but you know, I said, hey, that's schoolboy theory versus actual application, because for what we do with soft styrene and little bitty tiny drill bits, works great. Now, it is a bit of a luxury item, but I love it. It's so stable and so controllable. The other thing that I can run off of my off of an NG2S power supply is this thing, the pin sander, okay? This is a wonderful little machine. It buzzes that sanding foot back and forth at about 1 billion cycles per second. And it does a great job, like when you gotta sand a whole wing, for example. So it's wonderful. All those things will plug in to the same transformer. You just take the one thing out, plug the other thing in. If you have and I'll show you if I can type here. Pin sander. Okay, so the pin sander sells for, you can see, about 50 bucks. So let's say, I mean, you could easily spend a lot of money here. You can see that. You could spend up, you know, you could spend $300 to get all of this stuff, to do all of these things. And you have a great system. Now, but one of the caveats is that the only speed control you have on the proxxon with the NG2S is this right here. So you're limited to that RPM range. If you wanted to turn it slower, okay, you can get the NG5E transformer. Wow, okay, I don't know why we get all those books, but here we go. The NG5E for about 85 bucks, all right? And it has its own speed control, and it lets you plug in 3 tools at once. So it'll let you slow this thing down to really good drilling speeds. If you know, for whatever reason, you just need to go slower than that 5,000, this thing will slow you down to basically 0, as I demonstrated. So for about 100, let's see, if you get this thing for 50, you get this thing for 85, so for about 135 bucks, you get this system that then allows you to plug in other stuff as well, like the pin sander for another 50 bucks. So let's say for about 180 or 90 bucks, you can get drilling, rotary tool stuff, and sanding with the proxxon system. And then, of course, this thing also fits into the proxxon drill press attachment, drill press, drill stand. Okay, this thing right here. So for another 85 bucks, you can convert this thing into basically a poor man's drill press. You can even use it as a poor man's mill. Trust me, I've done it. So again, and then you've got the foot switch, which is it's cheap. It's like 25 bucks. Proxxon foot switch. Okay, so there you go. That thing there, which is magic. It's essential in my opinion. And yeah, about 25 bucks for that thing. So how does that compare to what David Union does? All right, so let's go over here and take a look at the David Union website. And the first thing you're going to notice is that if you want purchase inquiries, please click this link to email. All right, they just don't make it super easy for you to buy, unfortunately. I don't know why that is, but it is what it is. Mine got here from Taiwan in just a matter of days, so it's really not a big deal. And I'm pretty sure that they take PayPal. But you can see over here that they've got this whole list of things that you can buy. Now the 365, okay, they give you the specs on it, but I have to go to my email because I did in fact email them and get the price list. And the 365 handy router is $89 list, okay? So for just this thing, $89, you're gonna get a really good rotary tool and a really good drill. So at that point, you know, you're about, I don't know, about 50 bucks less than getting the equivalent thing from Proxxon. But again, what you don't have is the ability to add other items like the pin sander. Now, they also make a pin sander. It's a little bitty thing. Let's see here. Okay. They have, let's see which one it is. Not the 300. Okay, they also have this thing, the 550 Elite, which gives you a speed control, and it's pretty slick. And the price on that thing is a bit higher. Of course, I can't find the link for the pin sander. Wouldn't you know it? Well, it is $99. I can tell you that from my email. It is the D400, $99. That D550E handpiece and control unit is $139. So, but to go back to just this thing and the pin sander, you're at basically 190 bucks. All right? That gets you essentially all the same capabilities as the Proxxon system if you buy this, the NG5E, and the pin sander. So honestly, in terms of price, if you want all of those capabilities, it's really a pretty even horse race. And I guess if you like to buy on Amazon, this is a little easier than buying this. If all you really want to do is drill and grind, you can get everything done right here for $89 retail. And it takes up less bench space. Obviously the hand piece is smaller, but the power supply end of it is a lot smaller as well, because this thing just has a little power supply that plugs into the wall, whereas this one has, you know, the NG2S is a chunk, it's a brick about that big that has to sit on your bench. So again, you know, in terms of price, it depends on what all you want to accomplish. But there you have it. Those are the actual numbers for both of these things. All right, so that is a wrap. Hopefully that gives you guys a solid review of the capabilities and pricing of this little David Union 365 handy router. It is a wonderful little tool, and I would highly recommend this thing to anybody who's looking to get into a rotary tool. Would I recommend it over the Proxxon? I mean, honestly, that's a difficult question to answer, because hopefully, as I showed you with pricing, it really depends on what you want to do. I mean, honestly, if all you want to do is drill and grind, yeah, I think this one is kind of an obvious answer because it's super small. It does a great job with both of those things, and it's about $50 less than buying the proxxon system. But system is the key word there. If you ever want to expand beyond just doing drilling and grinding, then you might want to consider going with proxxon because it does give you more kind of, headspace to grow into. So again, it really kind of depends on what you see yourself doing with the tool as to which one is the better option. But certainly neither one of them is bad, and I think that this is really cool that these guys are coming into the marketplace with something like this. So there you go. Hope you found that useful, and as always, I appreciate you guys watching. Much love.